Hey guys, welcome into another episode of DIRTRACKR Conversations. The Kings Royal and Brad Doty Classic are on tap this week for the World of Outlaws, and my good friend Blake Anderson hopped on with me to talk about the week ahead. If you don't know Blake, he's the voice of the All-Star Circuit of Champions, and you'll hear him on the mic this week at Eldora. We talked win favorites, some dark horses, what Kyle Larson's chances are, maybe potential car counts, a little bit of All-Star talk, and more. I've known Blake a long time, and he's super knowledgeable about the sport. Please enjoy the show. Attica Raceway Park tonight, Brad Doty Classic. I guess my first question is, and maybe you know this better than a lot of people, being is how you're friends with him, but is Kyle Larson racing this week?
Kyle is racing this week. I'm not sure what his first day is. I know he's going to run Eldora, and I think he's running the Doty tonight. Okay. I'm pretty sure.
I looked around this morning before I was doing my daily show trying to figure out if Larson was going to race, but I feel like, you know, in thinking about him racing this week, obviously he won the Doty last year, and what is kind of possible from him. Is he the favorite all week? Is he not the favorite all week? I feel like, you know, with what we saw him do last year, it's like everybody just kind of automatically assumes that when he shows up, he's going to win, but that's just hasn't really seemed to be the case. And obviously, you know, not running as much dirt this year, you know, that might be affecting his kind of ability to win any night out. But do you view him as the favorite this week?
Honestly, I don't view him as the favorite. He's obviously going to be, you give me three guys and he's going to be one of those three guys I'm probably going to pick. But man, right now, the way Brad Sweet's running, it's hard to not put Brad as his favorite, especially as well as he gets around Eldora. Obviously, the last Kings Royal winner. And he is maybe not the favorite over at Attica, because there's two outlaw drivers that have won outlaw features at Attica, Donnie and David Gravel, and the rest have been shut out there. But I think when we move to Eldora and you put the big money on the line, Brad gets around that place so well. But Kyle does too. Obviously Kyle won at Eldora last year and is very, very good there, and nearly won the governor's reign last year. But he just hasn't run the sprint car as much. And as we've seen in outlaw races this year, he's kind of been floating around in the top five, but hasn't really been that dominant force. And I think that has probably a little bit to do with just not running a sprint car every single night. But I certainly think, I'm not saying he's not capable of winning, because I have to think when you name people that are going to win the Royal, you have to mention him.
Brad Doty Classic tonight, as we talk, this is a 10,000 to win show, standard purse, you know, and if you take Brad Doty's name off of it, it's easy to look at this as just another outlaw show. But when you add Brad on top of this, how do you view the Brad Doty Classic? And obviously we've seen a lot of guys get emotional winning this race and have, you know, this is one a lot of guys want to win, but how do you view the Brad Doty Classic?
I think it's tough not to get emotional because everyone likes Brad. You'd be hard pressed to find a guy that's nicer than Brad and just more genuine and really cares about our sport at all levels. So I think that's part of why. It adds to the week because, you look at what you can do in Ohio right now. You can race the next 5 nights for 10,000, 175, 12,000, 175. So I think that really helps. But it is another race, but when you add Brad's name on it, I think just adding his name on there makes it a little bit bigger, and because of what Brad means to our sport.
You've spent a lot of time in Ohio, especially recently with, you know, Ohio Sprint Speed Week and all of the other stuff that the All-Stars have going on. But what is different about racing in Ohio? And I asked that especially kind of more about Attica than Eldora. I feel like Eldora is not really kind of part of like the weekly Ohio scene. Obviously, that, you know, they don't do a weekly 410 show there, but Attica specifically, I feel like it's a difficult place to get around. And you know, like you said, Donnie and David are the only two outlaw drivers that actually have outlaw wins there. But what's so difficult about those Ohio tracks and what makes them different?
I think it just slicks off so much, and I haven't driven a sprint car, but I feel like at Attica, you really have to drive with your feet as opposed to just being wide open somewhere. And it gets tricky because it can develop a big cushion, especially in turn number 4. And when it gets slick and then you bang off that cushion, it really makes kind of an intriguing combination, especially after turn number 4. But the locals usually seem to get around there so well. It kind of reminds me of it. It's maybe more central Pennsylvania, like from the difficulty of just adapting to it, because there's really not much else out there like it. It gets slick, but it doesn't get, say, Fremont slick, because that's a whole nother level of slick almost. But I don't know. I feel like if there's any year that the Outlaws are going to be able to go in and win at Attica, it's probably this year. I just feel like there hasn't been that dominant force in Northwest Ohio this year that we've seen in years past. Like last year, Cap Henry absolutely dominated the Northwest Ohio scene. This year, I mean, Cole Macedo's been super fast, but can he put the whole night together is the question. And that 18 car, he has the speed to pull the upset off. I feel like it's just if you can put that whole night together, especially at the start of the night, which I thought your qualifying piece the other day was intriguing because I think qualifying really is important. And there are a few drivers that can overcome it. And the driver that you mentioned, Brad Sweet, is probably one of those, just a select few drivers that can overcome an average qualifying effort to win.
Let's talk before we move on to the Kings Row. Let's talk about the All-Stars specifically. So, obviously, you being the voice of the All-Stars, you're embedded in that all the time. I did not see Tyler Courtney doing what he's doing this year. And I feel like before the season started, I feel like there was a lot of people pointing at Tyler Courtney as a guy that could win the championship. And I didn't see it. Like Tyler is a talented race car driver. There's no doubt about that. And all of that he's done in the past. But for him to transition this quickly from the non-wing car to the wing car and have this amount of success is, like, to me, has been really, really surprising. And I did not see at this point in the season for him to have a dominating lead in the championship.
Yeah, I thought Tyler would come in and adapt pretty well because he's made limited wing starts and done well. But I'll admit, I did not foresee him really kind of running away with the championship, at least the way that he has, and kind of dominating. I thought absolutely top 5. I thought if he could run third in points, that would be a pretty darn solid rookie effort. But man, I feel like he clicked off that first win at I-96 and that kind of lit the fuse. And he mentioned to me in the dash draw this weekend, I haven't won in a month. Well, he didn't win during speed week, but ran extremely well. He's just been running in the top 5. And honestly, that's what it takes to win the championship. I talked with one of his car owners, Tim Clausen, probably maybe a month into the season. And Tim and I were talking about average finishes and what it takes to win a championship. So I sent him, I think, the last 6 or 7 years worth of champions and their average finish, how many wins they had. And that's kind of been the benchmark for them. And they've been below that benchmark. I mean, below isn't better than that benchmark in average finish. So it's been pretty darn impressive. I mean, Justin Peck has been solid. Corey Lyson, I feel like, is kind of coming around. They're getting a lot more consistent. And Corey's starting to run in the top 5 a lot more than what he was, say, a month ago. So the last half of the season, I mean, we're past the halfway point, maybe last 40% of the season. It's going to be really interesting. And I feel like I'm kind of interested if we can press the reset button and see who wins, say, the last 30 races of the year, what it's going to be like, because we're at race 32 and we have 30 or 25 left or so.
Tell me about the guys kind of behind Tyler Courtney. I've been watching some of those Flow Racing videos, kind of following Tyler's season, but tell me about his crew chief. Tell me about his crew guys. I feel like, you have like the list of crew chiefs that you know about and the crew guys that you know about kind of across the board, but I don't feel like you have that with Tyler's crew. So tell me about their guys.
Yeah. Jake Argo is his crew chief, and Jake's been around for a long time, but Jake really, I believe he worked at CSI and did a lot of shock stuff. So he's super good with the shocks. And then Luke Vaughn's his car chief, and Luke just graduated college, and he works on aircrafts. So, I mean, he's a pretty smart guy. And the one that's really fun to keep an eye on is Balin. He's 15 years old. He does the tires, and just talking with some of the guys in the pit area, they said like Balin is the next crew chief. Like he is one in 10 years. Everyone's going to know who this kid is. And we're going to say, hey, remember that 15-year-old kid that worked on Tyler Courtney's car way back in 2021? Look what he's doing now. I've just heard nothing but good things about just how smart he is. And his parents, I believe, if I remember right, they drove him like an hour each way for him to start working on this race car and really kind of follow his dreams. But they kind of put together a crew that hasn't really been on the road, especially, Luke and Balin. They haven't traveled, and it's just clicked. They've done very, very well. And they're you talk to them, 3 highly intelligent guys. And I think that really shows is how they have navigated the season. It's pretty darn impressive of what they've been able to do with, as you said, 3 guys that are kind of relatively unknown. I mean, Jake was known here in Indiana circles, but maybe outside of that, not really. But he's a superb crew chief.
Yeah, for sure. Moving over to the Kings Row and Eldora, you're going to be there all 4 days on the microphone in various capacities. We saw a couple of weeks ago with the Double Dreams, Brandon Overton just go on this insane run and literally win everything and take it. Every time he was on the track, he was incredibly fast. I feel like we're not like, I think I saw a tweet or something from the other day from somebody about like whether that was possible this weekend with the Kings Royals. I don't think it is. I feel like, that we will see a very different week play out for the Kings Royals, but what are you kind of looking at? I know you do a ton of research and a ton of notes. Like, what are things that kind of stand out to you as we get ready to start these 4 days?
I will go ahead and say right now, I do not see a driver sweeping this weekend. That's incredibly hard. Not that it wasn't hard that's not taking anything away from what Brandon Overton
did.
No,
for sure.
That's certainly absolutely one of the most impressive things I've seen in a race car, but I don't see it happening in the sprint cars. What Brad Sweet has been super impressive there. Logan Schuchart, I think I'm going to say he's going to win one of the $175,000 races because he's going to be able to put together an effort that's going to start him in the top 10, where a couple of years ago we saw him go from like 12th to lead in 11 laps. If he can start inside that top 6 and win a heat race, he's going to be one to keep an eye on. The thing that most interests me is a guy like Carson Macedo that I feel like is a contender pretty much everywhere, especially in this 41 car Phil Dietz. He has yet to make an A main at the Kings Royal. And that's going to change this week. He's going to make 2, and I think he'll be a contender. But can a guy come in and upset things? Can a non-outlaw guy come in and win? Can Tyler Courtney be a force? Because Tyler in a non-wing sprint car at Eldora is, as we saw at Let's Race 2, pretty darn impressive. He had 5 straight wins and ran second and threw a slider to lead late, and then ran well in the wing car, ran 2 top 10s in May and led some laps. So Tyler's a guy, if he can hit that invert right, could be interesting to see because he gets around there so well. But I think Brad Sweet he's the guy right now. He gets around Eldora good. And what he's done the last 3 weeks in a sprint car leading into Kings Royal, he's flying high right now in that 49 car.
I feel like somebody that and I don't know that calling him a dark horse is really fair, but I feel like somebody people really need to watch out this week for is Brent Marks.
Yes.
He won one of the Governor's Rain races last year. He's run well. He's won at Eldora in the past. And it seems like since he's kind of gotten back in his own equipment, things have kind of turned back around for him. But do you honestly think that he's a guy that could win one of these races?
Absolutely. I mean, he won an outlaw race there this spring, and he set quick time with the All-Stars at Sharon. I realized Sharon and Eldora are polar opposites, but he proved that he can that was a good qualifying effort, which has always been kind of his maybe Achilles heel is qualifying, because you see few drivers pass more cars than Brent Marks. If he can start towards the front, which with this Eldora format, say he doesn't have the greatest qualifying effort and hits that invert right, oh boy, look out. I think you're right. Brent Marks may be a dark horse, if you could say that. I'm really interested to see what Anthony Macri can do with Bernie working on the car.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. And Jim Shuttlesworth as well, who he's going to have a known commodity with Jim helping on the car as well. And then you add Bernie in, and that car is always fast. That's going to be one where, and it's a half mile. And obviously Anthony on half miles is pretty impressive. One at Port Royal here this past week. There are some cool, intriguing storylines coming into this week as who can run well, who can win. And obviously with 2 Kings Royals, I mean, that's going to be I think going to be madness.
Your series does heat race inversions. The Outlaws used to do heat race inversions. They don't anymore, but we're going to see that this week with the Kings Royal. Do you think guys play the game in terms of qualifying? Are guys trying to hit certain spots? Is that possible? To try to play that game to try to get a better heat race start?
So I asked Dale Blaney that, ironically, just a couple of weeks ago, as a guy that, has not played the game, but knows how to do it. And he told me, yeah, you can tinker with it and you can do it. It's tough, but it's possible. And I was one of those guys that thought, you can't sandbag. It's too hard. Especially from first to say 36, where the invert lies, it could be honestly, it's not unrealistic to say 0.3 of a second could divide that. And how do you quantify that? But he said, the way that these guys can do things and fuel these cars, it's possible to do that. And I thought that was pretty interesting, because I thought that was just this kind of unicorn out there that wasn't possible.
What do you think we will see in terms of car count at Eldora?
I'm guessing upper 50s to 60. I mean, I feel like in a normal year, we'd probably be in the 70 neighborhood, but guys are having to watch how they use their equipment right now because motor builders are struggling to get parts. Parts are, are limited, excuse me, there. And that's interesting. And I feel like the purse continues to rise at Kings Royal, which is going to be fun. So I really think in coming years, we're going to see that car count climb. But I think around 60 maybe ish, get to low 60s would be pretty darn good. And that gives us 6 10-car heat races, which is all you can ask for.
Do you think that the format is a reason why we don't see more? Like, I feel like we always kind of flirt around that 100-car number with the Nationals. And like, I guess I'm wondering why we don't see closer to that for Kings Royal.
I think the format honestly gives the locals a chance to come in and do well. Like knowing that, hey, if I can just qualify in the middle of this pack, I'm going to start on the front row of a heat race and I've got a chance. I mean, that's why you've seen, Cole Duncan on the front row of the Kings Royal and Trey Starks and such, where they've got a chance to come in and upset things. So I honestly think the format helps it. The difference is, I feel like between the Knoxville Nationals and the Kings Royal is the Nationals is the Nationals, obviously, but the purse at the Nationals is, I mean,
just because it's so many.
In the E-Main, it's like $700.
Yeah.
And the first non-transfer at the Knoxville Nationals is like $6,000 or $7,000. I mean, that's a win, say with the All-Stars, to just not make the A, and it's $10,000 to start the A. But Kings Royal is closing, it's getting better. I think the Kings Royal is up to $4,000 to start now, something like that. So the purse at the Kings Royal now versus say 5 years ago, even from second to 24th, is increased exponentially. So, but I also think it kind of hurts it maybe being so close to the Nationals. I don't know what your thoughts are there, being that, guys can't come out for 3-4 weeks and race maybe from California. So they have to pick one in Iowa closer than California. And during the Knoxville Nationals, Central Pennsylvania tracks are quiet, non-point shows and such. So they almost encourage their guys to go out there, whereas Kings Royal, it's point shows. So guys aren't missing things in Central PA. Yeah,
I just like, and I have this kind of same question. I put a tweet out this week about some stuff happening in the late model world and the idea of there being some kind of higher paying shows and like all of a sudden it seems like, and maybe it's not all of a sudden, but maybe it just seems like it, but that like almost like these higher paying shows, like it almost doesn't matter that you still have like certain guys are going to show up and certain guys that aren't, like no matter what. And I'm not like super like, into the finances and stuff of some of these race teams to understand like, what they're trying to get done on a weekly basis. But I know I feel like if I was somewhere in the country with a 410 sprint car and the Kings Royal was going on, I don't know why you wouldn't show up there. Just, whether you're going to win it or not win it. Like, I feel like the Nationals has that a little bit, that it's like, I'm just going to go run the Knoxville Nationals because it's the Knoxville Nationals and it doesn't matter how I race. I don't know why the Kings Royal isn't like kind of that same feeling to me. And I'm wondering like what more it will take, I guess, to kind of get it to that point.
I've kind of wondered the same thing. Like, I don't know, Knoxville Nationals on Saturday, it has a feel to it that you can't even manufacture. And I didn't feel that last year. That was one of my first things that I commented when I got back from the, I can't even remember what it was called, but the impromptu Knoxville Nationals, let's call it the not nationals.
The not nationals.
Yeah. Is Saturday didn't really have that feel. It had a big race feel, but it didn't have that like electrifying feel of walking underneath the grandstands on Saturday, and you can't manufacture it. It's like Friday Night Lights. It's just there. And Eldora is getting closer to that feel. And I've said to many people back home in Iowa, like the feel of Eldora now compared to the feel of Eldora 5 years ago is exponentially different. They're raising the game every year we go there. So it's getting closer, but I agree, man. If I had a 410, I'd be at Eldora. I mean, it's the second biggest race in sprint car racing. It's the highest paying winner share in sprint car racing. Obviously, take out the lap money at Knoxville, and these drivers want to race for big money. 175 grand is pretty damn big money, if you ask me.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I'm curious your take. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately is, what we're seeing with Donnie Schatz right now, right? Like, not that Donnie like isn't the Donnie of old, and that there aren't still like lots of things that team is working through. Like he's, it's not Ricky Warner anymore, and not to knock on Steve Swenson at all, but it's not Ricky Warner, and there's still obviously issues with the Ford engine. They're trying to figure out how that works with the car setup and all of this stuff. But I'm wondering just Donnie's style of driving and kind of where that is right now with things. And if you look at the guys that seem to be successful right now, the Carson Macedos, the Kyle Larsons, and even Brad to a point is like really hyper aggressive. And like, I feel like Donnie, that's just not how Donnie races. And one of the things that, you always respected about Donnie was Donnie won, but Donnie won clean.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if at this point, with as aggressive as the racing has gotten, is that hurting Donnie? The fact that he just won't bonsai guys like some of these other guys will.
That's a good point that I hadn't thought of. I feel like the whole Donnie deal is overblown. People are acting like Donnie's running 12th every night.
No, for sure. Yeah. And that's, I guess that's the other part of it is he's
in
still
the top
Donnie
5.
shots.
Like they're right there. I
Yeah.
feel like, if things fall their way, if the cards fall their way a couple times this year, he's got 4 or 5 wins. And that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But that's an excellent point where I feel like the driving styles have changed a little bit, and you have to kind of be that hyper aggressive, not where Donnie's kind of through the middle and a little bit more relaxed, and he's not going to drive someone dirty. And I feel like, as you've seen anymore, I almost feel like sometimes you have to drive a guy dirty. And that's something that I will always respect about Donnie Schatz, is he's just not willing to do that. He's not going to do that. And I think that's probably what makes him one of the best of all time. When's the last time that you've seen Donnie Schatz dirty someone up?
No,
you just can't name it. I mean,
yeah. But I think that's what's even more impressive about Donnie is the fact that he's been able to do what he's done, and he does it 1000% clean. And like, I feel like you don't even, like, if you look back over the kind of the course of Donnie's wins, like it's almost like you don't think about that that's the way he did it. But like, if you go back and watch Donnie race, like he doesn't do that. And when it's done to him, like, I mean, the Knoxville Nationals with Jason Johnson comes to mind. Yep. Like when it happens to him, like he's upset about it. But I feel like with what we've seen from, if you look at what Larson did last year, and not that Larson dirties people either. I don't want to say that Larson is a dirty driver by any stretch, but Larson is very, very aggressive in a sprint car. And, you've seen it with Carson Macedo, you see like when these guys are working lap traffic and things like that, some of the chances almost that they have to take to try to maintain their positions. And Donnie just doesn't do that. And I guess I'm wondering if that's, like you're seeing almost like a shift because of what you see from guys like Larson, that some of these other younger guys now coming up are thinking, okay, now like, I'm going to go try to do like what Larson does and be more aggressive. And if that's not hurting Donnie, because I don't see Donnie changing, especially at this point in his career, to be more like that.
I think that's more of a calculated risk too. Like the way he came up, you didn't have to drive like that. I mean, because Steve was going to drive you clean. Sammy was going to drive you clean. Even, I mean, he didn't race against Doug much, but Doug wasn't, I mean, those guys, they didn't really drive on the ragged edge. They were just smooth and fast. And that's how Donnie is. And it's an interesting point to see, because even Brad Sweet's willing to go out on, he doesn't do it all the time, but he can. But Donnie's also, in his 40s, and maybe, I mean, how many more wins would he have too? If you think about it, would he have if he were willing to drive someone maybe a little bit dirty, or really push it past and, drive to the edge where it's like, I'm either going to win this or I'm going to flip it and, junk a car, where instead he just kind of said, you know what, I'll run second and win a championship. Yeah. So it is an interesting point though. I don't know how you quantify that risk.
Yeah, I don't know how you do either, but
it is something that's, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point.
When you look at the Kings Royal this week, and obviously we've talked about it, a bunch of different drivers, are there some other guys that you think could jump up and like surprise people and maybe not win the Kings Royal, but maybe win a prelim night or run really well?
There's one driver I didn't mention, and obviously now I feel like an idiot, that I feel like can win the Kings Royal, is going to win. I'm going to call it win one of the 4 races at the Kings Royal this weekend, or he's going to win a qualifying night of the Knoxville Nationals. One of these 6 nights, Kerry Madsen. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about, part of the reason they got him is he can feel things out, but you're also a contender every time you're at Knoxville and every time you're at Eldora. And Kerry is a guy that he is going to be one to watch. And obviously he's proven he's fast. He got 2 outlaw wins. He's won at Knoxville. So he'll be one that's going to be fun to keep an eye on. I'm interested there. Corey Eliason has run well at Eldora in the past. Obviously ran on the podium in the Roth car and has run well in the Rodin car there. Can he hit that light switch and cash in big this week? He's been, as I said, been running better with the All-Stars, ran second this past weekend, and has certainly found his groove a little bit, maybe starting to hit on some things, and now's the right time to be hitting on stuff. I feel like that's maybe a guy you could quantify as a dark horse because he hasn't had the greatest year, hasn't won yet in a 410, won a 360 show at Knoxville last week, and is kind of maybe finding his stride there in that 26 car. Justin Peck is a guy that will lay it all on the line to win a race like that and is thrilling to watch. Aaron Reitzel's a guy that I'm interested to see too. I think he could win the Brad Doty Classic tonight. At the All-Stars, he maybe didn't have the amount of wins at Attica that you would think that he had, but he broke leading probably 3 or 4 times. It was really dusty one night. A lap car spun in front of him, couldn't see it, hit him. So he probably got 5 or 6 more wins at Attica. Things go his way, and he's been super fast this year in spots. And he's a guy, as you mentioned, is willing to take a risk to win a big race. So I feel like that's a guy that could win one. And I'm struggling to think of maybe anybody else that could. There's not anyone. I'm not saying there's not anyone that can do it. I'm interested to see, okay, is this Jack Hodenshield, obviously his last draw there? Is this Dave Blaney's last go there too? Because there's something magical about watching those two guys run there that even if they're in the C main, it's still, you find most of the people in the grandstands are out of tension when they're on the racetrack. Dave's been fast.
How big of a science experiment is that car that Dave's been running?
Holy cow. I went up to it and looked at it on Saturday at Sharon and took a picture of it, and everyone's like, I got 3 or 4 responses, and it wasn't even about the car. It was about the names on the nose wing. And that's all people wanted to say was, what is going on? It's an experiment, but you've seen he's run 3 races this year. He ran 3rd with us at Sharon, didn't go to the scales. So got 24th, won with the Outlaws, and was potentially going to win the Lou Blaney this weekend and then hit the infield tire. So he's proved in 3 races he's been fast, and Eldora has been a place where he's had some pretty big moments in his career. And in Pete Grove's 70 a couple of years ago, we thought maybe we were going to see him get back to victory lane at an outlaw race at Eldora. And I think he broke her in 2nd, and that was pretty thrilling. So I'm excited. I don't take it for granted to see those guys run on the grand stage at Eldora.
Back to Kerry really quick. Obviously, you're a guy that's kind of part of that like Tony Stewart kind of universe. You're in the shop there. What is that relationship like between him and Ricky Warner? I feel like Kerry and Donnie have such different personalities. And I'm just curious, like what that dynamic is like between the two of them. And obviously, like the work that Kerry has done, I'm sure has helped elevate that kind of whole program there. But what has that relationship been like?
It seems to be pretty good. I haven't been able to spend a ton of time around them because they've been racing with the Outlaws and racing out with Knoxville quite a bit and getting laps on motors out there and trying to get things dialed in for the Nationals. But boy, they've clicked. I mean, they've been so fast every time they're on the racetrack. I know at first when Kerry got in the car, he was here in the shop for 4 or 5 days, and Gooch, Jeff Patterson, that's like Tony, he's the OG employee 1, told him, hey, you've been in the shop way too much for the 14 driver. We're going to you can't come here anymore. You've been here 3 times this year. I'm sorry. Your pass doesn't work anymore. But he seems to be clicking. And I feel like we're seeing retro Kerry Madsen again. That's just on the hammer all the time, comfortable in the race car, willing to take risks again, which has been fun to see. Like I said, I think he's going to win one of those 6 races I mentioned, whether it be his qualifying night at Knoxville, the Nationals, or one of these 4 nights at Eldora.
Yeah, for sure. I will let you go. I certainly appreciate the time today. Who are the guys? I feel like we just saw Hunter Schoenberg win a race this weekend. Who else is capable right now, you think, of jumping up and surprising and maybe winning an outlaw show, winning an all-star show, or, winning one of these big shows, some of these young guys that you get to see on a weekly basis?
I think Macri's going to win a big all-star show before the end of the year. He's going to be maybe Tusky 50 and jump out, and we're starting to see him travel a little bit more. You look at like Lincoln Speedway, if he'd leave Lincoln, I'm interested to see, but Tyler Ross has been pretty good there. He just won again for his 2nd time this year, and the Lincoln guys kind of stay at Lincoln, but Tyler will go run Williams Grove every once in a while. So I'm interested to see how that pairing goes. Logan Wagner's coming to Knoxville Nationals this year, along with Mike. The Zemco car hasn't been out there for a while, but you look what Logan's able to do on half miles. Could he surprise some people and lock into the Knoxville Nationals main event for a guy that doesn't race much outside of Port Royal? That's going to be an interesting one. I don't really know if there's a guy outside of Cole Macedo in Ohio that could do that. I'm not saying there isn't, but no one comes to mind. Travis Philo has been fast lately, won at Attica a couple weeks ago. And now Travis has AJ Havens working on the car. If it goes to the bottom, Greg Wilson could be fun with Andy Potter. I mean, he and Andy's a great wrench. And as we know, on a slick track, Greg thrives. So does Eldora slick off later in the week? I mean, if Greg Wilson is a contender at Eldora come Saturday night,
that would be bananas.
The world might burn.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be that'd be the greatest victory lane in sprint car racing. I feel like if he's able to win at Eldora this week, like I don't think it'd be topped.
Yeah,
his passion for that place.
Well, Blake Anderson, voice of the All-Stars, plug your show. I know you're doing some recording. You've got your show over there on Flow Racing. Who have you had on lately, and how can people check that out?
Yeah, Anderson 410. I try to get to an array of guests. I think today I'm going to have Michael Rigsby, and I'm going to try to talk to Shane Stewart here in the next week or so because of his ties to the next couple of weeks with Kings Royal, and obviously the 360 Nationals are some events that are pretty tied to his legacy, and now running Port City. That's been super successful down there with Kevin Rudine. But I've had a lot of the All-Star guys, had David Gravel on a couple times, got to get Tyler Courtney again. Zeb Wise has been good. He's been fun. Zeb's been fast this year, and he's only 18. But it's been interesting. It was one of those shows that came out of the pandemic when we were thinking of content for the pandemic. And then we've just kind of kept it going, and we do it once a week, and I enjoy it. I'm going to be off for a couple of weeks here as I go back home, but it's work too. I mean, you know how much work it is to get these shows put together. I don't think folks realize how much work it is to get your notes in line and be prepared for show, which is what blows me away that you do it every single day. I just got to do it once a week.
It's dumb, but it's super dumb.
It's been fun and I enjoy it. And it's an opportunity for me to get to know, obviously race fans get to know these drivers a little bit, but me to get to know these guys a little bit better. And I think it helps me in the booth as well, be able to tell some stories about these guys as they're running up front.
So cool. Well, Blake, have fun at Eldora. Thanks for the time today.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it.